Hello, welcome to The Corner Table, a podcast about food and drink in Madison produced by the Capital Times. My two favorite things are theater and food, and with a limited number of hours in the evening, those are not always the easiest things to bring together. So this week on the podcast, I'm talking with my friend Sarah Knab about date night dining, the best pre-theater restaurants downtown, and some awesome promotions for other nights of the week too. I'm your host, Cap Times food writer Lindsay Christians, and I had such a good time talking with Sarah this week about some of our favorite spots. If you've got tickets to Nutcracker or Christmas Carol these next few weeks, hopefully we can provide some inspiration. Welcome, Sarah.
Thank you so much, Lindsay. It's so good to be here.
So first of all, just tell everybody a little bit about who you are and what you do.
I am Sarah, and I work downtown at Overture Center. For the first couple of years, I was the group sales manager, so I was interacting with ticket patrons and offering advice on certain things, and now I do our communications and public relations.
So do you get the question a lot okay, I'm going to go see Rent in January, and I really want to have a good meal beforehand. Do people ask you where they should go?
Yes, all the time. And sometimes it's what should I do after the show as well, before and after. So there are several great options downtown, I think.
One of my challenges when I'm seeing a show midweek is what's open afterwards, after the show. But what kind of advice do you give people, starting with before the show? Are there any restaurants around that have pre-theater dinners?
Cento, right across the street, does a prefix meal for Broadway, symphony, anything that's kind of opera going on at Overture, which is great and very convenient. There are several other places downtown that offer happy hour specials, which is a perfect timing if you're trying to do a pre-show thing. And certain restaurants like Estrellan do a date night menu prefix. Sometimes it's not necessarily set to be before a show, but it could work.
Yeah, that would totally work. We did this the other night, actually. So we went before Grinch, right?
That's right.
And the thing is, so that one, I feel like in terms of a prefix, it's a little bit more. It's $90 for two. To me, it's totally worth it because you get that little mini paella.
So magical. I think you could just get the mini paella and it'd be worth it.
Yeah, it would totally just be worth it for that. But they do a bunch of sampling of their different tapas. And then I feel like I always want the roasted potatoes there because I think they roast them in chicken fat or duck
something
fat
glorious, yeah.
Something ridiculously good. And there's sherry vinegar or something on them too. And it brightens them up so they're kind of fatty and salty, but then with that little bit of vinegar in there too.
Totally. So good with everything else that you can kind of sample there. So that's a great option. Just leave a little bit of extra time so you can really savor those samplings.
I always, when it's before a show, I always try to give myself at least 2 hours so I'm not rushed. That is actually something that I started to learn even better from our mutual friend Lauren, who was always she wants to be on time, in the theater, at least 15 minutes before the show. And I was always the one racing in at the very last minute.
You're not the only one, but that's a good lesson to have learned from Lauren. And I used to find myself doing it, but then working in a theater etiquette is kind of pounded into you. So 15 minutes is great.
Yeah, it's a good amount of time. And you're less likely to be crawling over people or just rushing. And yeah, it feels a little bit better. One of the places I like to go after a show is Tornado.
That's what I always recommend. And I tell cast members too, because they don't tend to eat dinner before they perform. So afterward, there's not a whole lot open, but I say you have to go to Tornado, especially if they're staying downtown.
I remember, I think it was during the Lion King run, they were all going to Field Table all the time. And they would just take this long table, and you can tell that they're from the tour because they're beautiful people.
Yeah, they are. And so fit. And
yeah. And I was it's the cast because they're gorgeous.
Yeah, and you have to assume because they're not in their makeup anymore. So they look different than being Scar on stage. But.
Yeah, for sure. I really like places that give lots of options in terms of before the show being able to try a lot of different things. So I've done Taverna Kaya, which has smaller plates, and that works really well. But also I'll stop into Gray's and have popcorn.
Oh, yeah, that's a great, and they have small plates too. And then if you go, I think Monday through Thursday, they have their happy hour specials, which is always nice to save a little on wine. Another one is Rare Steakhouse. Actually, in their bar area, they've got a great happy hour menu during the week that's half off of their bar food, glasses of wine, tap beer, and their signature cocktails.
And the signature cocktails, I wrote about them a while ago now, so I'm not sure if they're all still the same, but they were doing really just classics, like Sazerac or French 75.
They did, and they have a serious Manhattan. It's pretty great.
That sounds perfect, especially before, like, Christmas Carol. I just want to chill out. Also, Christmas Carol, I'm always surprised at how dark it is. I've seen it for years, but I'm like, oh, it's a ghost story. And just like some productions, and ours in Madison doesn't play up the creepy as much as it used to, but it's still like a dark story. There's ghosts and stuff in it, and they surprise Scrooge, and he's a horrible, mean person for most of the play. And so you're just sort of like, I need a cocktail.
A cocktail.
So I'm not afraid of the ghost of Christmas future. Cool. So you have a young son.
I do.
So how often do you get to go out for date night? Is that something that you get to do very often?
Not super often, actually. And sometimes we bring him on date night, which kind of defeats the purpose, but it's family date night.
Are there things that he likes that surprise you?
Oh, yeah. He loves grilled octopus. He loves, like mussels that come with bread and frites, and he eats basically anything that we eat, which is something we were purposeful about when introducing him to food. But it's fun to be able to share in that experience with him, and as he grows up, he'll be able to enjoy foods that he may not have otherwise.
Are there places that you've gone for date night that you've really loved, that you have great specials?
Yes, we have gone to Sal's on East Side, not in Sun Prairie.
Oh, the Salvatore's Tomato Pie is on East Johnson.
Yes, that's right. And they do a special on Tuesday nights, which is $30 for a salad or some kind of starter, a pizza, and a bottle of wine, which is just totally nuts. So if we go alone, it's a very affordable evening. And if we bring our son, he'll get their tacos, which are also awesome. And it's still a great option.
That's really great. Grandpa's Pizzeria on Willie Street is doing I think theirs is Tuesdays too. And I think it's $45 and it's 3 courses. So I think probably a starter, a pizza, and a dessert. But I don't even know if they would necessarily hold you to having a pizza. It's just that's kind of most of their mains. Mm-hmm. That deal at Grandpa's is just such a good deal. They also, so for starters, I really love their beet salad. They have a roasted beet salad, and I think it's like a cashew puree or something on the bottom. And it's been obviously beets and goat cheese is a classic combination, but it's so beautiful in part because especially during the summer and fall, they put edible flowers on it.
Oh, so lovely.
Yeah, it's so perfect. And the wine list at Grandpa's is pretty good. I feel like sometimes the wine specials that come with things, I am particular about my wine, and so I'm just sort of can I upgrade this? Date night at Merchant. Have you tried that?
I haven't been yet, but I follow them on social media, and they always post pictures. It looks to be different every Tuesday. Also on Tuesday though, and I think starter, entree, dessert, and wine is included. And Lucille does something similar, I think, as well.
$40.
$40.
My husband was like for 2 people? And I was like, yeah. He's like, oh, no, it's got to be each. I'm like, no, it's for 2. And the cool thing about that, I was like, okay, I have not done this. I've been wanting to because we normally don't like the date night specials in part because we have to get the same thing. And I don't like anyone to ever get the same thing so we can all try different stuff. They had this special, actually, I printed it out. I have to tell you about this. So grilled pork steak, Fazenda Boatera, which is a local farm, I think, south of here. Hakure turnip. I'm not saying that right, I'm sure. But so pork steak, turnips, mulled and roasted apples, rainbow shard, and then a Calvados pork demi-glace. I know.
I'm drooling right now all over this microphone.
So it just sounded so good. And I was like, oh, pork steak, Patrick will love it. So we go, and they're like, actually, we've sold out of the date night special because we went at it was close. It's 8:30. I think it was close to 9 o'clock. It was later, right? And it was Tuesday, so they had sold out of their special. But they were like, "We'll still give you the date night special. Just pick any 2 entrees."
Stop.
And so I think my husband had ravioli, and I had like a beautiful like vegetarian dumpling thing that had like eggplant, and it was just gorgeous. I think I had like little squash dumplings in there, and it was like mushrooms and just like beautiful fall like flavors. It was great. And then the table next to us, two girls were on like doing the date night special, and they both got the pork steak. Came out like they clearly like got it right before we did, and I was looking at it and I was like, oh, that looks amazing, but also this is awesome.
Yeah.
So I was totally happy. I will say, like, we had a choice of like a Malbec bottle of wine or a Sauvignon Blanc. It's not great wine. It's not wine that they put on the rest of their menu, but if you're just looking for like a Tuesday night, it's such a great deal.
Great deal. And, $40 per person isn't really that bad if you're doing a full-out tasting menu, which is something that we like to do at Caseta Kitchen and Counter.
Yes.
On Friday nights, they have those beautiful tasting menus.
Those are gorgeous.
They are. And it's nice. We have done that for date night alone, and we've done it with our son. And we like to sit up at the counter and totally bother Tommy and Michael and the other chefs cooking while they're making the magic happen. But they offer wine pairings as well for an additional cost, but they're always very well matched, and everything's delicious.
That's $40, and you get like 4 courses, right?
4 courses.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, and it's beautiful. It changes every week, and it seems to be pretty seasonal.
That's awesome. So I know they've done like a squash-themed one. Do you remember other themes that have been?
Yeah, there's been like a classic Italian meal that was more family style with lasagna and tiramisu for dessert and things like that. They've done more seafood-focused. I know they did one where they were raising money for the California wildfires that was really California themed. They had kind of a sushi roll to start, and they're not afraid to be creative, but they're also not afraid to be traditional, and everything I've had there has been great.
The thing that's amazing to me about Caseta is that Caseta is that they have the food is exceptional and the service is really lovely, and it's really so it can feel very attentive without feeling overly formal.
Right. You do feel like you're in a friend's kitchen. There's a KitchenAid and cookbooks up on the shelf. They have all their It's just, I really feel at home there.
Nice. That's a place, too, that you could go to right before Overture.
Yep.
Because it's just like a block away, right?
Mm-hmm. And they have extended their hours, or at least as of late, to make sandwiches later. But they also, during the week, do the charcuterie. And then on Thursdays, the wine tasting to kind of match it that I think rotates.
Nice. And it's 4 wines on Thursdays, and I don't remember how much the pairing is, but it's not terribly expensive.
No, I think it was something like $15.
Nice. So I'm curious for you, like especially like if you're just going out with your husband, are there things that make for a really good date night for you in terms of like, do you want to go to a place where there aren't kids? Like, is that something, or does that not bother you? Like how do you feel like when you're going out for a date night? What are your criteria?
We probably don't mind as much as couples without children to be at a place where there are other kids. But if we're leaving our child at home, it's nice to kind of get away a little bit. Yeah. Though, as most parents will attest, you often just find yourself talking about your children anyway.
I wonder, like, are there cuisines that you go for that you're like, okay, we're going to get Indian or we're going to get Thai because, it's going to be a little bit spicier and maybe not to his taste?
Yeah, definitely. We do tend to do Indian or Thai when we don't have our son with us because they're not his preferred cuisines, and we both enjoy them. My husband lived in Bahrain for a couple of years in the Navy, so he had all sorts of spicy foods and still likes to enjoy them, which is a little bit hard for a tiny palate.
One thing that I found that is a potential challenge, I was on my way to the opera to see Carmen, and we stopped and had like some wine and a little bit of like appetizers at Graft, just kind of, up and around the corner on the square. And I hadn't been in a little while, and I was excited to come back. And but we're there at Graft, and this has never happened to me before, but the bartender was shaking a cocktail for somebody, not me, but it exploded. Like the top part of the cocktail shaker flew off, and it showered me with a gimlet. And I was kind of laughing, and I just tasted some on my arm, and I was like, oh, it's a gimlet. Like,
I'm glad you said you tasted it, because I was thinking in my head I would probably have.
You're like, what is this? But it ended up in my hair
Oh.
and on my dress. And I thought, okay. And like there's sugar in that cocktail. And so your hair kind of, it gets stiff.
And the people next to you probably were thinking, wow, she smells boozy.
I know. And I thought, well, I don't have time to go home before the opera, so I'm just going to smell delicious in Carmen. And the bartender originally, I think he at first thought that he had only gotten himself, like sprayed himself. And he was like, well, I'm like, worse things have happened. Not a big deal. And I was just sort of like, okay. And then he gave us, like all four of us on the corner, he gave us a free cocktail.
Oh, that was nice.
Yeah.
That makes up for it.
I was like, that's totally worth it. I was like, I'm going to have to get this dress dry clean, but whatever. That's the perils of going out to eat before a show.
Yeah, that's true. And there are, like you said, Tornado is a great option. I prefer it for after, and they have their late night menu. It's pretty great.
Red Elephant is a cute little spot that just opened up.
Yeah, chocolate. I think they serve wine there too, and coffee.
Yeah, and it's like a nice little like place if you want to go right before, or Kilwin's, which is an Achilles heel of mine because they have chocolate-covered graham crackers.
Yeah.
And I love those so much. There have been times when my dinner before a show has actually been just chocolate-covered graham crackers.
Well, that'll get you through.
From Kilwin's. And it totally does.
Totally. And we often will. One time we went to dinner before a show at Heritage and had a beautiful date night with my in-laws, actually. It's kind of become a tradition to stop at Kilwin's for a sweet and or some ice cream before the show.
That's perfect. Yeah, that's perfect. We should mention, though, you cannot bring coffee or food into Overture Hall.
You cannot. They do have drinks for sale there, though. And what I learned recently is the pours are a little bit, they're like 7 ounces. So if you think they're a couple bucks too expensive, there's a reason for it.
And if you're going into the symphony, you can't have any food or drink at all because you have to be able to listen to the beautiful music.
As you should. Just soak it all in.
As you should, exactly. So, well, thank you for coming on today.
Thank you so much for having me. I love talking about food and wine and theater. So.
All right. Cheers.
Cheers.
This has been The Corner Table, a podcast about food and drink in Madison, produced by the Capital Times. Editing for the podcast is done by Eric Lawrenson, and our music was composed by Patrick Christians. You can find more food and drinks news at captimes.com and subscribe to The Corner Table wherever you get your podcasts. Follow us on Facebook at Corner Table Podcast. I'm your host, Cap Times food writer Lindsay Christians, and my wish for you this week is something covered in chocolate. I'm pretty sure there's never a time when I don't want a chocolate-covered pretzel. Cheers!